Welcome back. Where's the love in the Quran? Does God love us? Does God encourage us to love Him and to love one another? Let's discuss this with Dr. Shabir Ally. Now, Dr. Shabir Ally, sometimes when people criticize the Quran, one of the criticisms that they level against it is the fact that it doesn't deal with love very much, perhaps in reference to other scriptures. What are your thoughts on what the Quran has to say about love?
Actually, the Quran says a lot about love. To begin with, it describes God as loving. وَهُوَ الْغَفُورُ الْوَدُودُ. He is forgiving and He is loving. Wadud. And it shows that God actually loves human beings, and in particular, He loves those who do good things. For example, the Quran says, وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. God loves those who are good. One might here criticize the Quran for saying that the Quran, by saying that the Quran does not say that God loves all human beings. Mm-hmm. But our response to that should be that God loves all human beings in a basic way, because He is our Creator and He loves human beings for that very fact. But at the same time, He is creating us for a purpose, and if we're not going to fulfill that purpose, then He does not extend the same love to us. The Quran asks, أَفَنَجْعَلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ كَالْمُجْرِمِينَ. Am I going to treat the ones who submit to me the same way as the ones who are criminals? And naturally, I mean, the fact that we put criminals behind bars in this life is not a proof that we don't love the criminals. As human beings, we love them in a basic way, but naturally we have more love for those who will do justifiable and right things. And the same seems to apply to God as well. And in this way, we see that the Quran says, Wallahu bin nasi la ra'ufur rahim. Inna Allah bin nasi la ra'ufur rahim. Certainly God is tender towards all human beings. So it's not that He is only loving towards believers, but we can say that He loves believers in a special way.
Mm-hmm. How does that love that God has for believers manifest itself? Can we see signs of it?
Yes. Often when we talk about love in the context of the English language, we just talk about the feeling. But it seems that in the Quranic perspective, the love should be accompanied by some real actions that demonstrate that love. And God's love is demonstrated in the first place for human beings by the fact that He is compassionate towards human beings. He provides things that human beings need. He relieves them from distress. He grants them comforts in life, and He has stored up for us in the life hereafter a greater level of comfort, and we expect that even seeing God will give us a certain degree of delight. So the love for God is manifest by His compassion, and it is that compassion of God which is stressed again and again in the Quran. For example, in the names of God which are repeated most often in the Quran, when we say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful One, what we have here are two names of God expressing His deep compassion and benevolence towards human beings.
Mm-hmm. So is God more compassionate towards those who do good?
In a special way, yes. He has stored up certain rewards for those who do good. It's like us. We might embrace one person and put another person behind bars. We love them both as human beings, and we realize and we recognize that each is deserving of a certain basic level of human dignity and special treatment. But the one that we embrace, naturally we do out of a greater and special sort of love in recognition of the affinity that is created when we see another person doing the things that we behold to be good.
Mm-hmm. Now, does the Quran talk about the love that a believer has for God?
Yes, the Quran, for example, says, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. Those who believe are more intense in their love for God. Whereas, for example, some other people may love the idols that they worship or some other gods that they conceive of. The believer in the Quran is depicted as loving God more intensely than anyone else, to the extent that we love God even more than our family members. The Quran says in the 9th chapter, the 24th verse, if your fathers and your brothers and your relatives and your spouses are more dear to you than God, then wait until God brings about his commandment to pass, which means it's not going to be very good for you. So we need to develop that love, and believers are taught to pray in the 49th chapter of the Quran by saying, Habib ilayna al-iman, make faith beloved to us, wa zayyinhu fi qulubina, and decorate it in our hearts, wa karrih ilayna al-kufra wal-fusuqa wal-isyan, and make disbelief and wickedness and disobedience to be hateful to us. So we want to love God and love all of the good things, love faith, and have that so decorated and beautified in our hearts. And by contrast, we want to dislike the things which turn us away from God.
If we see someone who seems very devout, is that an indication that this individual loves God?
Yes, because the devoutness, the worship of God and doing the things which will be pleasing to God are naturally flowing out of that love. It's almost like you love somebody and you buy presents for that person. Buying the presents is an indication. Of course, sometimes there could be false indications. One might be pretending. But it is difficult to continue pretending being devout. Sometimes people look at devout people and they say, oh, he's just pretending. But how long can you pretend?
It can get very tiring.
Yes, you can get tired of pretending, doing all of this work for, just for pretense. If you wanted to get name and fame and so on, there's so many different ways of trying to claim that while enjoying yourself to committing some of the sins that people commit and from which they derive their sinful pleasures. But for the believer, the pleasure is obtained by actually worshiping God sincerely. And if one does not worship God sincerely, there is no pleasure to be derived from it. So it is difficult to be insincere for a long time. Sometimes one might start out being insincere, but one can actually be drawn into a closeness with God after being engaged in prayer and all of the good things after a while.
Does the Quran encourage us to love one another, love other human beings?
Yes, it is interesting that the Quran shows that one of the qualities of the believers is that they love even people who do not love them. For example, in the 3rd chapter, the Quran says, "Ha antum haula'i tuhibbunahum wa la yuhibbunakum." Here you are, you love them, but they do not love you. And the Quran is showing that this is a description of the believers. But of course, the Quran follows that up by showing that in the case where the people do not love you and they may be actually plotting your demise, then you have to be cautious in the face of their plots. But at the same time, you need to rest assured that God will be overwhelming, and it is His plan that eventually will materialize, despite whatever other people may be planning. But He does not repudiate the fact that believers naturally love other people, even people who are against them and people who do not love them.
The Quran talks about other relationships, familial relationships, for example. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. On the one hand, the Quran shows that we will have love between us, between believers as a whole to begin with. In one verse, the Quran says that those who believe and do righteous deeds, سَنَجْعَلُ لَهُمْ وُدًّا. God will put or create love for them. And in the case of believers in Jesus, in particular, the Quran says that God placed love between them. And in the case of family members, in spouses, God says that He places love between the spouses. So naturally there is this love that is spoken about in the Quran affecting all aspects of society.
What sort of responsibilities and obligations come with love? I'm thinking more about relationships.
Yes, in relationships, it's not enough to just simply say, I love you, but to follow that up with the acts of compassion that demonstrate that love. So within a family relationship, we should have that sense of compassion and caring for each other. In the second chapter of the Quran, in the 187th verse, the Quran describes husbands and wives as though they were clothing for each other. And what do clothing do for us? Clothing protects us from the harsh environment, from harmful elements, and it hides our shame. In a similar way, the spouses will treat each other by protecting each other, caring for each other so that they are safe from harmful outside influences and environmental factors. And the spouses will protect the secrets of each other from being revealed to all and sundry. So the compassionate nature of the marital relationship should be maintained. In the fourth chapter of the Quran, in the 19th verse, men in particular are instructed to live with their wives bil ma'ruf, as the Quran puts it. And the word ma'ruf in Arabic can mean according to what is customary, or it could mean according to what is kindness, as kindness would dictate, or that which is honorable. So it can have any one of these three meanings, and here it seems to have all of them combined. According to a customary way, whatever normal provisions are provided for spouses in the environment in which you live, you have the obligation to provide at least that. And of course, goodness would dictate that you do more than this. You are to deal with them in kindness and in a noble manner.
All right, thank you for that, Dr. Shabir Ally.
You're welcome.
We'll take a break, but when we return, we will answer questions we received from you, our viewers.